Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Hope we're doing damn well out there. I'm your host, Nick Kleitsch, on another episode of the Life with Nick podcast. With me today is a very special gentleman. Not only is he a good friend, but he's also my cousin, and love him to death. So, Brady, how you doing, man?
Good, Kleitch. How are you doing?
I'm doing super, super good, and I'm just super grateful that we got a chance to get on here and record some really good shit. So, thank you for doing this, man.
Oh yes, I'm very excited for this conversation. Very excited.
Hell yeah. So I know the folks that have listened to me in the past kind of have a general understanding of, the podcast and what we're all about. And I would say based on that, a lot of people know that I'm into fitness, I'm into health, and we're going to cover a lot of different stuff under that umbrella today. But I think for starters, the meat of what we're going to be discussing is going to be your occupation and what you've gotten into. So go ahead and just kind of give a high level overview of kind of where you're at in life, and we'll kick it from there.
All right, so I'm currently a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy. Got my doctorate degree from Des Moines University. Graduated in June of 2023. So I've been out in the workforce. Finally done with school after 7 years. Yeah, I've been working since last June, so about a year and a half, pretty close to anyway. So it's been good. Been staying busy, but a lot of good experience so far. So.
Hell yeah, man. And the reason I wanted to bring that up right away is because you're the first guy that, or person, I guess, that I've talked to in this occupation. And it coincides with a lot of stuff that I love about health and fitness. And the main kind of theme that we're going to talk a lot about is, functional health and trying to actually have an approach of wanting to better ourselves, or in your case, heal people that are going through everyday injuries. Maybe they're not high level athletes anymore, but they're just dealing with pain. They're dealing with recovery. I'm sure I'm missing some things here. So, in terms of just kind of your overview and how you've gotten into the occupation that you're in, just kind of go over a little bit of maybe a day in the life, a week in the life, and just some types of patients that you work with. And from there, I know we'll dive into some good stuff.
Okay, yeah. So I will say the day in the life of a PT totally depends on kind of your setting. I know that you can specialize in sports, you can work with athletes, you can work with people with strokes, you can work with the general population. I'm currently down in Knoxville in a hospital setting, and where my company is an outpatient clinic, but we kind of also see the inpatients down there. So my day probably looks a little bit different than others because I will see majority outpatient, but I also will go down and see the inpatients. And down there, you never know. There could be one person, there could be 10. Never know what they're in for. So it kind of keeps you on your toes. But my typical day, I will see ten patients is kind of my max. Some days I'll see 11 or 12. But we do 45-minute blocks at my company, which I really like. Population wise, majority I would say are between 45 and probably 70 to 75. A lot of like
Okay.
low back pain, total knees, total hips, shoulder replacements, ankle pain, things like that. So kind of see a wide variety of patients and down there, but kind of depends on the setting you're in, I would say, as far as day by day stuff. So and company wise too, everyone runs a little bit differently.
So do you have a like client file of, hey, I'm going to work with this person from basically when they're getting out of surgery, let's say, to fully recover? Or how does that relationship get built with those patients that you're seeing? Or are these literally people that you visit with for 45 minutes, once a week, and then you may not see them again? I assume it's not that way, but I'm just kind of curious on that too.
Yeah, so typically, you don't really control who like gets put on your schedule as like a new evaluation. So say you went and got your shoulder done, and you're on my schedule and say, Nick Kleitsch, total shoulder replacement from whatever doctor. So I would see you for your eval, and the first visit, regardless of where you go, is kind of like, hey, what's going on? What happened? Tell me a little bit about it. Tell me what your goals are, things like that. You'll check like range of motion, strength, pretty much anything you need to, depending on what body part you're treating. A lot of the surgeries have like a protocol that you'll kind of follow. So especially shoulders, you can only do certain things. They're in a sling for 6 weeks. So you kind of follow them through that protocol. Total knees too, but some people just like general low back pain. It could be stemming from the foot. It could be stemming from the upper back. Like it could be going from anywhere. So the first day is kind of figuring out like what's going on, what's causing the pain, and then let's make a game plan together, how we're going to fix this. Um, Typically, I will have them throughout like their entire plan of care is what we call it. So from the first day, if it's 10 visits, if it's 25, if it's three, usually I'm with them the whole time. We also utilize PTA, so like a physical therapy assistant. So it's usually me, and then that other person might see him the next time, or depending on the schedule, how busy it is. But typically, I'll be with someone throughout their entire plan of care, which I like because my company is really good at keeping us like that and not just passing people around. Because if I was a patient, I would feel like, hey, like no one, I'm seeing someone new every time. Like they don't know what's going on with me. Whereas I see them damn near every time, which I like. So I can build a good
Yeah.
relationship, a good trusting relationship with them, which that goes a long way in healthcare.
Well, and I think that you can allow them to trust you a little bit more when this is the
Mhm.
case, because I feel like a lot of people are in and out, in and out, in and out, and to actually say, "Hey, we're gonna hash this out, and we're gonna set up a plan to succeed."
Mhm.
Um, Now, is that how your particular clinic focuses on that, or is that PT as a collective whole?
I would say it's as a collective whole. I know, like my company, I really like that they do 45-minute time blocks because it's always me and the patient. That's it. There's no one else coming in bothering us. Hey, whatever, you have another patient coming in. I know other companies. I won't say names. But I'm not a big fan of them because they will do 30-minute sessions. So a lot of the
Mm,
times, the patient, the main patient that the PT is seeing will be there for 15 minutes. They do a couple things, and then the therapist is like, "Hey, my next patient's coming in. So how about you go work with this high school student over here? They're going to run you through some exercises. I'll see you on Tuesday." So it's kind of like, and I mean, and I had a clinical rotation in a setting like that.
mhm.
Um, and there's nothing wrong with a therapist. They went through the same education we did. They know what they're doing. I think it's just the model that that company runs, where it's more like, hey, let's see as many people as we can.
Yeah,
Whereas
that's
my
fair.
company is like, hey, let's take time with these people and get to know them and get to the bottom of this and build that relationship. Which that's why I mean I love that about my company. So that was one of my big reasons of taking a job there compared to other places.
Yeah, and as we were catching up before the podcast, one thing that we talked a lot about is, and we'll get into this a little bit, but just I don't want to say like healthcare as a profit or medical, like that whole industry as a profit versus the actual end result of what we're actually trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
So when you were sharing some of this stuff, I was like, outside of us talking about this, I was like, this is to me the way that one would go about wanting to work with a clinic like that,
Hmm.
because I mean, we have to focus on the actual task at hand here. It's not so much, basically just turning a dollar. And
Hmm.
I say that because I don't, there will always be a need for this type of work, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, the idea of pumping as many people through, great, you make an extra, let's say 10 grand at the end of the year. I don't know what it all shake out to versus, hey, we helped 100 people, let's say, and we took them from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I know like a big thing, like with PT, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's different. If you have a protocol, a post-surgical thing is a little different. But if I get a patient that just comes in with general shoulder pain, my my goal is to see them as the least amount as possible while meeting their goals. Like I'm not trying to spread this thing out and say, hey, I have to see you for 6 months. It's like, hey, let's solve this thing in a month and get you back to 100% as fast as possible, properly and like obviously ethically and everything. But my goal is never to be like to push things out. Like let's get to the point. Let's get you back to pain free, doing what you want to do as fast as possible, and then you move on with your life. So that's what I like about PT. It's not. I mean, it's not. Hey, you know what? I'm going to see you for the rest of my life, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, which I think people coming into doing those sessions with that approach, they got to feel like they're in good hands. I
Mhm.
mean, at least I would, because you're sitting down, you're speaking with them most of the time. Gosh, I'd say maybe 90% of the time. These people have just such a minimal education to how their body even works, let alone all the other protocols and things we'll talk about later.
Mhm.
So it's just got to be refreshing that not only will they work with you, but it's all in the approach. It really, really
Mhm.
is. Um, Real quick, I want to define something for the listeners. They're hearing this maybe for the first time. You're using the terms inpatient, outpatient.
Mhm.
Could you just quickly define that for them just so they have a concept of what we're talking about?
Yeah, so outpatient is pretty much like athleticos, like select physical therapy, like a lot of like the bigger, you see whatever physical therapy. So outpatient is the setting where the patient or the client or patient, whatever, comes to you or they come to me. So um, then inpatient is like more of like the hospital setting, like maybe an older person slipped and fell or they had a stroke. They're staying in the hospital, so
Mm.
we will go to the hospital room and see them in their room. Whereas outpatient, people come into our clinic to be seen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I know that's not a monumental piece of information, but I do think it's important to at least get that nailed down.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you kind of opening things up here and just kind of laying things out. I do want to kind of switch gears a little bit
Mhm.
to you, Brady, and how you even got into this thing and wanting to be a physical therapist. We had talked a little bit off air just about why people get into the industry and all that good stuff. But what kind of called to you, man, as far as wanting to get into this field?
Um, I would say I was probably third or fourth grade, and I don't know really know what it was. I feel like I always enjoy helping people, just whatever it is. I like to help people, and I always had an interest in like medical and health, just kind of general stuff. And then I was like, I want to do something in the healthcare field, but I had no idea like what I wanted to do. And then in high school, I did a class called health careers. So like a chiro would come, a PT would come, a doctor, a surgeon, all these people would come and kind of explain what they did and share their story. And I was like, I think athletic training sounds right up my alley. I like sports. I like health. I like fitness. Sounds pretty awesome. So that's what I ran with, and I started at Iowa State with an athletic training major. So like I'm under
Okay.
kinesiology and then pre-athletic training. And I like the whole first semester was like, how to tape and just, ankle sprains and stuff like that. Um, and the one thing that actually kind of turned me off of it was to get into the actual program. The sophomore year was like, hey, you have to be at every single practice. You have to be the first one there, last one to leave. The cool part was like getting to travel with the football team. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I don't know. And I feel like majority of those jobs, like my dream job of it as an athletic trainer would be working for like a pro or a college team.
Oh, man,
No,
yeah.
that's, like, pretty hard to get into, so it's a lot of, like, high school and, like, junior high stuff, and I wasn't really drawn to, like, "Hey, I wanna go watch, like, a high school JV volleyball game on a Tuesday night and stay up till 9 PM doing so." Um, so that kinda turned me off a little bit from athletic training, and then I actually talked to one of my wrestling coaches. I ran into him at an Iowa Hawkeye wrestling meet, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I mentioned what I was in 18. He's like, "You're too smart for that, dude. Like, you gotta go further. Like, you gotta go further." And we had, like, a good 5-minute conversation. I left, and I was like, damn, like, yeah, I think he's right. And so that's when I was kind of like
Mm,
looking into more things. Um, I never really had the desire to be like a surgeon or like a physician, I guess. I'm not really as interested in like the internal stuff. Not that
okay.
it's not important, but I was more interested in like getting people better and like just like lifting, fitness, sports. And I think PT, physical therapy, was just like the perfect combination of wanting to help people and then staying active, and being in like the fitness industry in a way. So it just kind of seemed like the perfect mesh of a career for me.
Well, whoever that person was, I'm assuming you have a good relationship with them because
Yes,
that's
yes,
pretty
sure do.
lofty advice to be telling a young man, but hey, kudos to
Hey,
them for
I'm glad he did. So
Beautiful, man. I love that. I will say, just from a family perspective, I feel like a lot of folks in our family have that wanting to serve, wanting to help people mentality. And
mhm,
we have, for reference, I won't name names, but we have a lot of gals in our family that are nurses and caregivers. And
yep,
um, it's just a really cool thing that I think we kind of naturally absorbed from different people in our family.
yeah.
Just to continue the ball there, so you're getting educated, you're slowly kind of finding this groove, of finding what you think is going to be the right fit. When does it really start going for you? Is it when you start seeing patients? Is it during a clinical? Like, when does it really heat up to be like, all right, I'm in this and I'm actually really really liking it.
So I started like at Iowa State, and then you're doing, like the whole like junior year, I was doing the whole application process of like, hey, like here's the schools I want to go to, etc. You're doing the essays and all that to get in, checking your grades, and doing all the classes you need to do. And I actually applied too late. I think my first time around, I kind of dropped the ball on that, and I was like, hey, maybe here's where I want to go. So I applied late. Ended up getting an interview and everything, and got waitlisted. So it was basically, okay,
Mm.
like, you kind of have the criteria we're looking for, but we're kind of full right now for next year's class. So I'm kind of like, shit, okay, that's on me. But I still wanted to do it. So I worked as a rehab tech for a year, getting more experience, and then reapplied early admission to DMU because I knew that's where I wanted to go. Got in right away. Got the phone call, so I was like, hell yeah, we're in. And
There it is.
that was like the biggest weight on my shoulder. Like I knew like my life is like, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. So getting in was the hardest part. And then, you're in class, once school starts and you're not making money, you're going to school, all your friends are out making money, having fun lives. You're like, God, this kind of sucks. Um, but obviously I got in, that's what I was there for. So you just kind of had to stick to your guns with that. But then on the first rotation, when you have a break from class, you're actually seeing, a couple of patients, mostly still kind of guided by the actual therapist. But that's kind of the first time it hits you of like, damn, this is going to be me like running the show in like 2 years. Like this is kind of crazy. And the 3 years of school went by so fast, and here we are. It's kind of hard to believe still. So
Yeah. Well, and in hindsight, maybe not to get like too like spiritual or anything, but maybe that wait period was what just the universe needed for you at that time,
mhm.
and it increases that I don't know if drive's the right word I want to use here, but like you kind of got that cookie taken away.
Yep.
And then when they gave it back, you're like, all right, I'm fucking mentally ready. I'm locked in.
Yeah.
I want this thing. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. And a big thing for me, like when I first got waitlisted, I was kind of like, I was bummed, I was upset. But then, my parents like, hey, just save, work, save some money. It's not the end of the world. And looking back, I'm actually really glad it happened to me because I made some like damn good friends in my class, and I'm sure that I would have in the class that I got waitlisted for too. But the class that I ended up with was like it couldn't have been better. Like the people I met and the people I went through it with. So that was like, okay, I got waitlisted for a reason, like you said. So like I'm
Yeah.
totally happy with how it worked out.
Yeah, that's the thing that's always like it's so hard in the moment to process all that, but
Mhm.
it does end up working out as it's supposed to.
Yep.
Um, I love it. I love touching on that stuff because I think the why behind things are as important as what we do, and so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So, kind of getting into meeting the founder of your clinic and just kind of feeling a good fit there. You had said some complimentary things about his approach, his background. Can you just give a high level of kind of the way he goes about operating things? Because I think that again, that's a little unique to what you guys are doing in
Mhm.
particular.
Yeah, so he's an awesome guy, and I know like the first time I met him, I could just tell like the way that he carries himself, which kind of gets passed down like through the employees as well. Like it's kind of a standard of our company, I feel like. But he still shakes my hand every time I see him. He's like, "Hey, love you, man. Hope things are going well." He'll send you birthday cards. He'll text you when things go well for you. Just like an awesome guy, and he has the approach of like, I want to help everybody get better, and there's no bullshit about him. Like
Mm.
most honest guy, and like he's just so down to earth. And I feel like in the company I work for, I want to say we have like 125, 150 employees. We have like 13 clinics, all in like
Oh
rural.
wow.
Yeah, and it's all like our niche is kind of like rural areas. We have like Indianola, Carlisle, Altoona are probably like our biggest like city, if you want to call them.
Hmm.
But a lot of them are like small towns like Jefferson, Osceola, Knoxville, smaller towns like that. I guess we haven't innovated too. It's kind of a bigger area close to Ames, but that's just kind of like our niche. But I feel like the whole company just kind of carries themselves the same way that he kind of projects on that. So I think working for a smaller company and like having a personal relationship with the people that started it, like that, you can tell by the way that the company's ran and how everyone works for the company that it's a good place.
And it's so true in terms of like birds of a feather flock together. I mean, you probably not you in particular, but like people, I always feel like, and this goes a little bit to my recruiting background, like when they find the right culture, the work itself is just like their passion, obviously, but you can be so either minimized or maximized by a good culture and a good company. So
Hmm.
you additionally had that fit as well as wanting to get into the industry. Um,
Hmm.
that I think is, arguably the biggest game changer that you'll
Mhm.
have in your career. Because even if you go on to want to start your own clinic or what have you, this gentleman here, he's going to be a part of your network and he's
Mhm.
grooming you for the right way to do things. And I
Mhm.
just think that, like, from a passing of the torch perspective, that's how you go out and inspire younger folks to like want to stay in the industry and do it right.
Yeah, and I think just kind of another quick highlight on him, like, he's always willing to help, like, everyone at my like, clinic-wide, we had like, a big course, I think it was actually the weekend of your wedding, so no one in my clinic
Oh,
could go. Um, yeah, and they're like, "Hey, like, we want someone in every clinic to kinda learn this stuff." So, our founder, Steve, and one of the other partners of the company came. So one is from Perry and the other's from Nevada. So probably a good hour and a half drive to Knoxville Clinic to like show us everything that they learned and like was taught in the clinic, like personally, like, hey, we're going to show you so you guys know. And like, I feel like not a lot of people would be willing to do that, but
no
they are.
way.
So
Yeah. That's fantastic. So let's work a little bit into this functional medicine, functional fitness, health,
mhm,
wellness concept. Now that we've laid this nice foundation, so just a little bit on my personal philosophy. I know you're the same way as well too. You're a practicer of the things that you're teaching people how to
mhm,
do and why to do it, and I think that that's like such a huge thing, not only from a respect perspective of them, but also just like it seems like you care enough to want to learn why you're asking them to do these different exercises and protocols and whatnot.
mhm.
So, as far as you teaching them this, you live in everyday life. I know people can't see this, but you got a sauna in the
Yeah.
background here. So,
Yep. Oh yeah.
um, just talk a little bit maybe on your personal philosophy of health and wellness as a whole to how you kind of relate that with patients, because I'm sure that's just an extra layer of respect to them to be like, okay, Brady doesn't have, let's say knees and shoulder issues per se because he's doing these good protocols and how he lives his life. So now I
Mhm,
can trust that he's going to be showing me things that he's probably even done, or, I've seen you make some good content around this stuff too. So
mhm.
feel free to grab the ball and run with that as you choose.
Sure. So I'm gonna kind of tie in like I guess my approach to that. I like to treat people holistically. And what that means for me, and I guess just kind of generally, like, say you come in with a shoulder injury, and like, hey, let's dive down and figure out what's going on with the shoulder. But tell me about your home life. Tell me what you like to do for fun. Um, tell me about just goals that you have for your own life outside of because majority of people on the sheet they fill out, it says what is your goal, and 99% say to be pain free.
Mm,
Um, and pain is such a drastic thing. I interpret pain different than you do, and everyone interprets it different. So for me, I always like to say, hey, obviously, yeah, we want you to not have pain, but I mean, do you want to get back to gardening? Do you want to get back to playing with your grandkids? Do you want to get back to driving your tractor, or working on the farm? Like, let's get a goal other than pain, because pain is such a subjective. It's a number. I have 8 out of 10 pain today. Okay, what does that mean?
right.
It's kind of so that's kind of one thing that I kind of like to not necessarily avoid, but like, hey, like, let's go a little further than just to be pain free. And I guess so, like for me, treating people holistically, I like to look at them as a whole person because they have a life, they have a job. There's so much more going on than just someone with shoulder pain. So you kind of focus on the shoulder, but at the same time, try to get in their head of like what's going on with everything else. And that's kind of where I will tie in functional health. Like for me, I don't know if it's just the way I was raised or maybe some of the wrestling mindset that was kind of ingrained into me by my coaches. But like for me, movement is medicine. So when
Mm,
I'm not like moving or not working out, I just kind of feel like crap. And I know not everyone's the same that way, but there's small things like getting 8 hours of sleep, eating a diet not for fun but to feel yourself and to feel good. I think is one big thing that I've even tried to focus on myself. Because I know, I mean, obviously everyone has cheat meals and just the American diet is bullshit these days. So everyone has crappy food now and then, but my body knows when I eat like shit for a couple days in a row. Like I can feel it. And for
Absolutely.
me, trying to teach that to patients, diet, sleep, movement is medicine. Just getting your steps in per day. A lot of the people will. I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but like the amount of people that wake up and immediately eat a breakfast, They go drive to their job. They sit for 8 to 10 hours a day. They go home and watch TV for 4 hours. They get like, you're not moving. The body's meant to move. So just hitting on like the very foundation of the human body, movement, proper diet, proper sleep, those things go so far in like a patient's recovery that it's kind of mind blowing. Like the people, and obviously, post op people have pain with knees and shit like that. But so pain will keep them up. But if you kind of just focus like, hey, let's try to, maybe go to bed earlier, or try to supplement some protein in your diet, which will, the muscles need that to recover. So the more protein you get, the better sleep you get, your outcome is going to be better. So just like the very small things like that is kind of where I bring in the functional medicine. And there's more involved with it as far as like
Yeah.
stress and all that stuff too. But those are kind of the big ones I will hone on, is kind of like sleep, diet, and just moving the damn body. It's meant to move.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, and just to run with that a little bit, one thing that I've been just like I try to remind myself so regularly of this is like we in our ancestral DNA are endurance animals. Like I
Hmm.
think we either haven't been taught that or we don't respect it enough. But if you were to dial it back, I'm not going to give a history lesson here, but going after your food and having to physically run after your food, or
Yeah.
just like that is actually when we're at our most quote unquote like primal. And for those that don't even have an opportunity to be able to do that on a daily basis, they start having the mental like issues as much as physical issues. And I think that sometimes that can be so overlooked. It's like, I don't feel well. And it's like, okay, well, this might sound a little harsh, but like, when was the last time you were able to go on a mile run at a
Hmm.
decent pace and feel good about that? And
Hmm.
then it's like, oh, well, some people might not be capable of doing that. I totally get that. Like, this is, a space for you to kind of, share some of those, actual healing principles as to why. But we need to remember that we are supposed to be capable of push ups, pull ups,
Hmm.
squats, movement, running, like all of that stuff, cycling, like that's the human experience right there.
Yep.
And that's where we should try to set a goalpost in as a metaphor to say, okay, we need to be trying to remind ourselves to get back to that, because it's so easy, it's so tempting, right, to just do it the exact thing that you said, because life can be stressful. But so with that in mind, and if you have anything to add to that, feel free to. I was just going to kind of continue to go down that path a little bit.
Yeah. So another thing I like to talk to my patients about, and this is probably one of the biggest things I believe in, is a lot of people like will get surgeries, right when they retire or like around retirement. And I tell a lot of my patients, I'm like, I don't think you age, or I don't think, God, no, I can't think of what the quote is, but I think people age when they stop moving, not like as you
Mm,
age, because I've had a patient that was 78 years old and he's been working out, just push ups, air squats since he was like 20. The dude was in very impressive shape. And he's like, I'm 78, I'm old. And I'm like, you might think you're old, but like you are moving better than some 30-year-olds that I've seen in my life. Like, and that is dead serious. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm 65 or I'm 70. I can't do this. So that's kind of where the mindset comes in. Where I'm like I said, the body's meant to move. So I think people get sick, or that's what I tell them. I tell them, I'm like, people, you get sick not as you age, but when you stop moving. That's when your chronic health issues start to plummet, when you stop moving. And a lot of people, that hits them when they retire, because they retire and like, hey, I've done it. I've put in the 40 years of work. I'm going to sit on my ass for the next 10 years. Small movements, just walking 20 minutes a day, getting off your ass, will give you a hell of a lot better outcome of life when you're 70, 75, rather than spending 90% of your week in a healthcare clinic because your knee hurts, or you're overweight, or vice versa. So it's kind of, to me, it's like, do you want to be biking when you're 80, or do you want to be in a wheelchair when you're 80? You know,
so good.
and it's such a small, to me anyway, it's like a small change that has such an impact on your life that I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one thing I like to hone into. It's just it's not like you have to change your entire life to be healthy. Just change one thing at a time, stick with it, and see how you feel. And if you don't like a certain thing, switch it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we both know Peter Attia
Yeah.
quite well as far as like him and his approach to things. One thing I love so much about him is that whenever he's working with a patient, and mind you, he's a guy that obviously go out and look him up if you want. He's way above our pay grade, but
Mhm.
just an absolute beast. But he always confronts them and says, "Hey, I know this is painful right now,
Mhm.
but." Go in the future to that 80-year-old version of you, and what would that person tell this person right now? And again, 9 times out of 10, it's, hey, just suffer a little bit in the short term so then we can
Yep.
do these things as we get older.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing I'll filter in here too is when we go through movement and exercise and some of these things that cause a little bit of discomfort or a lot, depending on how much you're doing it,
Mhm.
even though those things do cause pain, I feel like going back to what you said on the spectrum, one thing I always try to encourage, like myself and others, is like build a relationship with that pain a little bit, because the moment it's done and your heart rate comes down, there's such a euphoria that comes with getting out of whatever painful situation that you were in, or like a sauna or an ice bath or what have you. That's where you really get that rush of endorphins of like, okay, I'm supposed to do this regularly and it kind of
Yeah.
sucks and the mind will play games with you, but afterwards they're like I always say, there's never a time that you come out of a workout and don't feel better than when you came, when you felt like when you come in.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
so that's just, I love it. I love it. Let's get into just a little bit, Brady, on like some protocols, if you will. So when you're looking at a hip or a shoulder, do you guys have kind of typical things that you implement right away, or is this truly customized to kind of everyone's body, as kind of everyone's a little bit different?
Um, as far as protocols, um, they are pretty specific, but there's also variability in a patient. If you think of a 40-year-old guy that has been working labor for 20 years, his shoulder's probably beat up. He's probably stronger than a 75-year-old lady that's getting her shoulder done. So you kind of have to look at what they did before, where their range of motion and strength was at before. Depends on the tear, what muscle was torn, and what they want to get back to. So just taking shoulder specifically, that's in my mind probably the worst of the three out of shoulders, hips, and knees. Like recovery wise, it's a little more gruesome and kind of blunt. But the first usually 6 weeks, the person is in a sling. So like when they come see me, we'll take them out of the sling. We call it passive motion, which is like me moving their arm like through these different motions.
Okay.
Um, some protocols, depending on what the surgery was like, hey, you can only take, shoulder flexion. You can only take it to X degrees above their head for 3 weeks, and then once they get there, then you can progress them further. Um, Same with like abduction and all these other motions. So shoulders is more specific, but then once they get out of the sling at 6 weeks, that's where like some people do very well and they kind of listen to what we tell them, and like because you kind of have to be cautious when you're out of a sling, and like it's just natural to like want to reach for something and grab something, but like your body's going to tell you what you shouldn't do.
Mm.
So that's where some people do really really well out of a sling or just generally, and then they progress awesome, their strength, their range of motion comes back. Some people struggle with it more. They're like, oh, I'm out of my sling, but I've been stuck like this for 6 weeks, so I have to guard myself and I can't do anything. So they don't really, they kind of take steps backwards in a way where they're not allowing themselves to progress because they're so scared to kind of like you said, kind of have pain. They think one thing of pain is the end of the world, and it's like, hey, today might be a little bit of pain, but you just gained 15 degrees in shoulder range of motion. That's you
Mm.
reaching here versus reaching up in your cupboard, which is what you need to do. So it's a big thing with like protocols. Like there is variability, but you kind of have to follow specifically. But then like knees is pretty straightforward because it's a hinge joint, so it can only bend. You can't. The shoulder and hip is more complex. It's a ball and socket joint, so there's a lot more degrees of freedom there to move. I guess a lot more that could go wrong with that. But I think shoulders overall is probably the most demanding, just kind of recovery with hips, knees, and shoulders.
Yeah, and I suppose too, just you're kind of bringing this out in conversation, but how often we use our arms without even
Hmm.
thinking about it,
Yep.
and then the psychological factor that goes with that a little bit too. This just kind of is random that came up in my mind, but I do think it's very valuable to talk about. When you have a protocol. Let's say you're meeting with a client. Do you guys preach a lot on consistency? Because I think that in life, in success, in anything, like there's a formula to it, and that's how you show up every single day to try to improve just a little bit. Now, one thing I love about the body is that when you're actually doing that, you physically can make those strides, whether it's 1%, 5%, 10%, whatever. But are you helping them through that mentally as well too? Of like, hey, let's say Janet, I know you don't feel like you've made that much progress, but you've been showing up here for 4 weeks in a row. And when you first saw me, you were literally casted up, and now you're, let's say, able to walk or able to raise your
Mhm.
arm to, the, shoulder or the
Yep.
chest. Do you guys preach on that at all, or what, how
Yeah.
does that kind of fit into things?
I like to, and kind of going back to how I said, I like to try to I ask people their goals outside of pain because that kind of gives you a number. Like I had one lady, she had, I think she had a slap tear up in her shoulder. And early on, I was like, what, like, and I like to ask people almost every visit, like, what do you feel like you're struggling with at home? What do you want to improve in that is kind of
Mm,
limiting, or like, what in your mind do you want to get better at that we haven't been doing, or that you start to improve on? Like this one lady, she's like, well, I have, my kid is about 40 pounds, and I just, she's like, I can't pick him up, but he wants me to all the time. So it's like, hey, that's a damn good goal. So like that kind of changes. I mean, it's different with the protocol, but like once they're out of that, it's like, hey, like let's start focusing on that kind of functional movement pattern or things that we need to do to get you there, rather than like, hey, let's strengthen the shoulder. It's like, yeah, it's good to have shoulder strength, but do you have strength for what you need to do?
man,
Like example,
that's fantastic.
like truck drivers, with neck pain or whatever, they have to be able to turn their head and then enough to drive safe. So it's like, yeah, you can increase neck range of motion, but you got to do stuff safely and like make it functional to people. Um, that's just kind of a short snippet on it. But another thing is like we only see them usually twice a week for 45 minutes. So a lot of what I tell people is, so we give them what we call an HEP, a home exercise program.
Okay.
But yeah, so say I'm working on your shoulder and we're at whatever point in the plan. It's like, hey, we tried a couple new exercises today. How did you like them? Do you think it's like, is it a benefit to you? Do you think it's dumb that we're doing this? Where are you at? And they're like, oh yeah, like that one felt pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna go print this off for you. Here's the weight I want you to do. Do this many sets and reps. Let me know next time how it feels. And some people come back like, hey, like I was really, really sore. It's like, okay, like we need to modify the weight or the sets and reps. Some people are like, hey, that's easy. So you kind of modify that each time, but you can always tell who does it and who doesn't, which is like your question with consistency. The people that are the most successful, and like not that I know every single thing there is to know about PT,
Sure.
but I would say I'm pretty good at like, hey, here's the direction we're heading. These exercises are going to help you get there. The people that don't do them, you can tell because they struggle more, and they're like, yeah, I they went okay, and it's like, okay, did you really do them? And the people are like, hey, like this one in particular, I didn't like, or this one, and it's like, okay, so you can tell pretty easily who does them, and the people that do typically have a lot better outcome with therapy. So like you said, it's just some people like they know it's gonna be painful and they know they got to do it, but they do it and they get better. And some people are like, that hurt, I'm done. You guys don't know what you're doing. I'm done.
Right.
And then you kind of lost their mindset too and their motivation. So sometimes that's hard to get back, but consistency is kind of the big thing with therapy. I think just continue.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's ups and downs with every rehab, but as long as the end game, as long as you're trending up, that's the goal. So consistency will get you there.
Yeah, and I bring that up because the reason I love that with the body so much in particular is that you can't cheat the body, right? Like
Mm.
getting into shape and being in shape is the one thing money can't buy in this world. So
Health as
the
well,
ol-
maybe.
the only way you can get to where you want to go is doing what you need to do on a consistent basis. And sure, people fall off from week to week, day to day, but the body just it keeps score and it knows when you're treating it well and it respects that you're doing that and it will heal very very well
Yep.
too. This is a little bit maybe of an interjection point to maybe some things that you do, and I ask this because when you're healthy and have energy and some of these things, it's easier to prevent maybe some of these injuries, susceptions, or what have you. So when you're just living your weekly life, are you doing any type of, band work? Are you doing any type of weight training, or like how do you maintain let's stick with shoulder for now, just because it is that kind of, multifaceted
Mhm.
joint that's tough. Just talk on that a little bit too, because I think, people listen to this might get a little bit of a value add to, okay, this guy's seeing patients every single day, but this is what he does specifically
Mhm.
for, let's say, shoulder health.
Sure. I'll be honest, one thing I kind of suck at is like warming up and cooling down right now. I just do. I mean, I'll like no matter what body part I'm looking like, I'll do a quick treadmill jog or something like that. But I do pretty bad, especially for like shoulders, like getting them loose. I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you. Um, but I like to like I do work out. I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week is. I mean, three is kind of minimum for me. Some days it's a quick 30-minute workout. Other days it's a solid hour, and it kind of depends how I'm feeling. What like some days I'm like I squatted pretty heavy last week, and I was pretty sore for like 3 or 4 days in my legs. I'm like, next time I hit legs, let's go a little lighter. Still work them, but not kill them. They need to recover. Um, as far as like shoulder health goes, there's so many there's so many things that could impact that as far because the upper trap, just for example, is this neck muscle here. It connects to your vertebrae in your neck, but your cervical spine up in your neck, and it goes to the collarbone, the back of your scapula, your shoulder blade, and then down to the shoulder. So people with shoulder pain sometimes it's more the upper trap or vice versa. So it's such a complex joint as far as like rehabbing it, I guess is kind of a good way to put it. Um, just shoulder health, I think the biggest thing is like obviously you want to be strong, you want it to move like range of motion wise, but like shoulder stability is one of the big things that I like to focus on.
Mm,
Um, and that I mean that's plank taps. There's 1,000 different things you could do for it, but like just general stability. I mean, like I said, there's 1,000 different shoulder exercises you're going to see online. Some are bullshit, some are really good. Um, but yeah, just kind of brief. Like I do bad at warming up and cooling them down, but the big thing for me is just like staying consistent. Like I said, I
yeah.
mean, if I miss the gym for a week, like I just kind of feel like a piece of shit myself. And like I said, I mean, and people that start, you just got to start. Doesn't You don't have to deadlift 350 pounds week one. You don't have to bench press 1,000 pounds. Just start somewhere. Another big thing for me, I like to educate patients on is like find something you like. I mean, if
Yes.
so, yeah. Like for example, if you hate squats, go do step ups or stairs, or if you don't want to do a certain exercise, there's a bunch of different things you can do. And with just walking, like that's one of the most beneficial exercises you could do is just walking. And it's so simple, but if that's what you like to do, just do it and find something that you like and that you kind of look forward to doing. And that will take you a long ways with just generally working out and staying consistent, I think. Because another big thing, and not to go on a rant, but like a lot of
No, you're good, man.
like the New Year's resolution people, a lot of them are who knows how long, but most of them I would say probably haven't worked out in 5 years. And like, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds in a week. And they don't see immediate results. And you're not gonna, because consistency over time is what wins, like you've been saying. So I think a lot of it is like they rush into it too soon. They don't know what they're doing. They get sore. They get their shoulder starts hurting, their knee starts hurting. Like shit, this isn't for me. I'm done. And then they quit. And then
Right.
they fall back into their own pattern where it's like start low, find something you like to do, and just take it slow. It's a game of a lifelong game, is I guess a better way to put it. Just
Yeah. Well,
you got to
very
play
well
the
said,
game.
though.
Yeah, you got to play
Yeah.
the game.
There's a gentleman that I follow that, the thing that makes this journey so compelling to me that I love is that, uh, I don't necessarily adhere to what his protocol is, but the fact that he still does it, like I have mad respect. But he picks one exercise, like just one day, let's say a shoulder press or an RDL, and he'll do like 10 sets of, let's say, five or so or seven. And his whole point is like, I've been doing this every day, every week for like 2 years straight.
Hmm.
So he goes, what I do is not hard, but why I like the way I show up every week allows me to be so in shape.
Yep.
And I'm sharing that right now to say, even if the protocol is a 20-minute incline walk with 10 push-ups, maybe some lat pull downs or some banded pull-ups, any kind of movement, rotationally, like just doing that consistently is still far better than trying to go in one time every 2 weeks with like a 4 hour workout.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
that's not gonna. I mean, yeah, you might feel good, but long term, you're not. It's not gonna do much for you. Like you said, consistency is what's gonna win.
Yeah. So I just I share that to also motivate people that if they do feel like they're in a position right now where, hey, I know I was in shape at one point and I want to get back there, just find a way to get whatever you like to do done. Just
Mhm,
execute that, approach on a weekly basis, and you're a guy that heals people every single day.
mhm,
It doesn't fail. The
mhm.
formula is what it is for a reason. So
Yep.
um beautiful, man. I appreciate you talking on some of that. And I'm just going to throw this in here for my own selfish reason because it's my podcast and I like to help people as well too. But I'm a huge advocate, and I revisited this probably a year ago, and that is just push-ups, dips, and pull-ups,
Mhm,
and something with cardiovascular exercise, whether biking, running, any type of thing. Like just being able to do those functional things is so overlooked. So
mhm.
again, if you're someone there that's like, I don't even know where to start, like no joke, 3 sets of push-ups, a couple pull-ups, some walking, like you'll be totally fine with that. But instead of me wasting your time on my own rant here, we'll keep the ball moving a little bit. Um, so we've kind of hinted at this a little bit, and I want to get here now just because we're really rolling in the podcast.
Mhm,
So there right now seems to be a movement in the U.S., unfortunately, of chronic pain, chronic illness, and we listened to a podcast recently that you recommended to me, and they were talking a lot about just how broken the system is, so to speak. And we're not wearing tin hats, and we're not conspiracy theorists here, but we do have to address the fact that I don't think that most of healthcare wants you to get from being sick to being fully healthy.
mhm.
And I say that because it is a for-profit business. So in a pop-up pill culture, in a consistently something that kind of favors you being on a long-term pill for whatever reason. Do you see a lot of that? What are your thoughts on some of that stuff? And I only ask because you've been in school, you've seen both sides, but you're also practicing and helping people as well too. So I don't know if you want to share some statistics on some
Yeah.
of that stuff, but I'd love to get into that too.
Yeah, as far as I'll get a little bit into some statistics, but I will say, one thing that's not in our scope of practice as a physical therapist, which means we're not really allowed to do it. Essentially, I can't go give someone, I can't cut into their knee and replace it. It's not in my scope of practice. But we cannot prescribe medications.
Mm,
So, and I like that because first off, I don't like we got educated, I would say somewhat minimally on the pharmaceutical stuff. Obviously, like my approach is holistically, let's get you moving. I understand that some pills are needed in certain places, and that's fine. But the I kind of run into a struggle with the people that are like just chronic pain, like, hey, I need this to do this. I need to pop this pill to go to sleep, blah blah blah. And it's just like I think they have like the identity of I need this pill to function.
Yeah, and not
Um,
to cut you off, but that,
mm,
that's probably a better way for me to say it. I know, like, I still do believe like it is definitely a for-profit
mm.
approach of like they
Oh
don't
yeah,
really care if you get healthy or not. But the
100%.
way that you phrased that was far better. It's more of the necessity of like
Yep.
this has helped me in the short term. I have to have it.
Yeah, and like obviously like post op, I get it. People are in pain, so yeah, you can have hydros or oxy, whatever. But like, hey, let's get you off those as soon as possible because sometimes your body. I mean, 1,000 years, 100 years ago, they didn't have that stuff. People still healed.
Right.
Think about that. So obviously, like, yeah, it's nice to not be in pain, but at the same time, I don't want you on them chronically because it's gonna inhibit you a little bit, and it's gonna inhibit your body's natural response to heal itself, which is an insane thing that the body can do. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I actually listened to that podcast. For people out there, it's Joe Rogan with Casey and Callie Means. They get into a lot of stuff that we'll kind of just briefly touch on. But I encourage everyone to listen to that. It's pretty eye opening stuff. Um, and these are just straight stats. So I'm just going to read some and then a couple of them, and then just kind of see what you think. So since 1992, there has been a dementia rise in young adults 3% per year in the last 20 years. Crazy. 1% decrease in fertility, both men and women, every year since 1992.
I mean, that should be
It's
quite alarming
insanity.
if you're listening to
Insanity.
that.
So in 1992, there was 1% of Americans had type 2 diabetes. Right now, it's 50%, probably higher. probably higher.
When they shared that, like, I that was kind of a pause for me
It's fucking
because
insane. Like, on
50.
excuse my French, but insanity.
Yeah,
And then they talked. Obviously, you can just look around our country and see, but the rise of childhood obesity is disgusting. On like, I'll be blunt, it's disgusting. A lot of that goes back to the food that we're giving our kids, and I think the culture now, it's like, I like, give me this now. So that's fast food, which is not. I mean, not all this to get into the statistics on that, but fast food is probably not the best for you. But a lot of people are on, they're on the go constantly. So it's like, hey, look, I don't care what it is, let's just eat it and get it in your system. You know what I mean? Um, and when Casey, I think, was talking about how now if a 6-year-old goes into the doctor and they're like, hey, a little bit overweight, 90% of the doctors say nothing about nutrition and movement. They say, here, take Ozempic,
right.
which is fucking. And sorry, excuse my French, but
No, no, you're good,
it's
man.
insanity. It's straight insanity, because it's asking for a chronic issue that can be fixed so easily with early intervention with diet and movement. It's the foundation of the human body. So it's just, and that's just a couple. Like, that is just, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach just thinking that's how a lot of the healthcare system is. And obviously I'm in it, but I see myself as being on a different side, because I'm not out here giving pills.
Right.
I'm prescribing medication and diet and exercise, which is what I firmly believe in. Um, but I think a lot of the issue is just like, hey, like, this is what I'm feeling. They're like, hey, let's give you a band-aid for the root cause. Let's give you this pill, and hopefully it fixes it. It might cause 1,000 of these side effects, which I'll give you a different pill for those, and then
Right.
you'll continue to see a doctor. We're like, hey, like, let's actually, like, figure out what's going on and solve the root cause instead of take these pills. But sorry to not just going around, but follow the money, and that'll tell you everything you need to know. It's all big
Amen, dude.
pharma. It's all the big pharma is owned by, cigarette companies, and they don't make money on healthy people. They don't, and it's a sad reality, but it's true.
Yeah, so we're saying all this just to be very clear to the listeners that we're simply proponents of a couple things. First off, we have to fight against the mindset
Hmm.
of just taking something to think it's going to solve all your problems.
Yep.
Secondly, there's nothing that can replace what the body's supposed to do, and that is to move, as you
Hmm.
have mentioned a handful of times. And lastly, and we haven't necessarily hit this directly, but as much as you can get into the groove of taking a pill for a certain thing, you can do the same thing by going on a run,
Yep.
by going in the sauna, by doing other things that will lead to a healthier outcome.
Hmm.
Now, that has to do more with like the mindset of like, hey, I'm just going to do this. But I would say this, and I know you mentioned like 3 to 5 times a week. I mean, I feel like I'm in that as well, and I'm not like 6% body fat by any means. Like I'm
Yep.
still a little bit big, but um, being almost addicted to working out is a far better problem than being reliant on something at one point that was told that you're going to be on this for the rest of your life, let's say, or this
Hmm.
helps and you just never stop taking it.
Yep. And I think another big thing that they kind of touched on in that podcast, is like mental health, and I believe it's a real thing. People have different things going on in their own head that no one really understands. But one of the crazy things that I kind of found, and I've actually had experience with this, is the increase in the SSRI like dosage. It's like, hey,
Mm,
I'm a little sad. Okay, let's get you on an SSRI. Or like, I'm tired. All right, let's get you on this SSRI, because they're making money on it. Um, but I actually had my physical for, so my company, I have to get a physical every year, and I went in there and I was talking like how I'm not sleeping very well and just other things. And she was like, oh, like, are you depressed? Are you? And I was like, No, like, no, not really." And she's like, "Okay, like, fill out this sheet." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." So I filled it out. I know it's pretty much a depression screening thing. And I filled it out. And she's like, "Okay, well, doesn't really like look like you're depressed, but if you want, like, I can get you started on this SSRI and see how it is." And I was like, with no I can't remember what I said, like, no disrespect to her, but I understand it, but I was like, I do things for myself. Like, I work out. I like to sit in the sauna. I like to cold plunge. I was like, for me, that's what I like to do. I was like, I know how I can relieve my own stress and like get that. Like, if I am having a bad day, I know what to do to like get myself out of it, where I don't need to rely on what they want to give me. and I understand everyone is different with their thoughts on that. Um, but that's just mine. So it's just, I think it's just crazy. Like she didn't really ask anything about that, and they just probably weren't educated on that.
Right.
Their upbringing is like, hey, this person is going through this. Like, let's give them this to fix it immediately.
Immediately.
And
Yeah.
that's like that's why I said it's more of a, hey, like let's put a band-aid on the symptoms and get you on all these things, instead of being like, hey, like let me take an extra 10 minutes to get to know what's going on. And I think that's kind of where the healthcare system is failing us as Americans is, like, I think they talk about on the podcast, like they have physicians have 7 minutes per patient.
That right
How are
there
you
is also
gonna
alarming.
Yeah, how are you gonna figure out what's going on with them in 7 minutes? You're not. So what are you gonna do? Give them a goddamn pill and say, hey, see me in 6 months when I give you another one for your side effects. Like it's just, that's the problem right there. It really is. But
Yeah.
they're paid for how many people they see and not the outcomes that the people they see have. Is That's the problem.
Absolutely.
That's the
And
problem.
we'll give you know, some grace to them in the sense that it's they're fighting against a bigger beast, which
Hmm.
is they're doing what they can with what they know.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
you can't blame them. It's like I said, it's how the system is, and I think the system fails them as well.
yeah, absolutely, because they're obviously just trying to get through their weeks and their months
Yeah.
and whatnot. But um, the thing in the podcast that I really liked going on some of these statistics and this general concept that we're hammering on right now is I can't remember who it was, but they had mentioned something about how birth control and antidotes and medicine before that really got implemented, it was never even thought about that you would be taking this over a year. Like the
Hmm.
whole concept of being permanently prescribed to something
Yep.
was not even a thing until, you know, within the last 50 to 80 years. And I'm not going to go on a whole speech here on birth control and whatnot. I'm not smart enough to talk on that topic,
Hmm.
and I'm also not a lady either. But like that to me was the revolution of the podcast that really said, oh, once they know that they can get somebody to take this on a regular basis as a business, unfortunately,
Hmm.
why wouldn't you want that more?
Yep.
Like even if you're genuinely wanting to help, you're like, wow, I could help them in the short term, but
Hmm.
if I can have a monthly subscriber, that also is going to make me money, you
Yep.
know. So it's just weird dichotomy in America that it is money and following the money and where that goes. But I think it's important to like point these out because if you're someone listening to this and you're saying, you know what, Nick, you just don't understand, like my situation's different or whatever, I would just challenge you to say, like, when can you get back to this maybe new story that you need to tell yourself or trying out some of these functional protocols to see if you can eventually wean yourself off of some of this stuff
Hmm.
because I mean, as you know, when you're most healthy and when you're working out regularly, doing these protocols of sauna, stretching, mobility, I like you feel so fucking good,
Hmm.
and that's the feeling that I wish that they could preach a little bit more and people could fall in love with because it's going to help you in every single facet of life.
Hmm.
And again, I don't think these medications were meant to be taken on a regular basis
No,
for the rest of your life.
no, and it just causes like, I mean, you could probably go back to like 1900s before. I mean, they had like, like the old school medications that still work today that are natural, but obviously when they realized they can mass produce this stuff for a quick buck and a quick benefit to the patient, that's when the food industry went to shit. That's when the big pharma took over, and that's when chronic issues started becoming more prevalent. I mean, I saw a picture like a week ago of like people on a beach in California in the 1970s. They're all in shape. Everyone looks great. And then they had a picture of 2024. Disgusting. Like just disgusting the way that
Yes.
us as a society have let ourselves go. And no one, I shouldn't say no one, but not a lot of people seem to give a shit, which
Right.
is sad. So,
Yeah, they can fall into I call it a little bit of a victim mentality, but the reason like I say that, and I might even be coming across as a dick about it, but I just feel passionately about this is that like if you've ever talked to someone who was formerly quite obese and has transformed themselves into being in shape, they will be a living testimony to tell you that, hey, like this is a far better lifestyle that I'm living now than what I was formerly living.
yeah,
And I think that's really powerful because yes, again, in very specific situations, you may truly need this medication. And again, we're not sitting here telling you to not do what you need
yeah,
to do.
yeah.
But at the same token, give yourself the chance
Hmm.
of trying to get into better shape as an individual because there's just so much information now from all these smart people that are telling us all the benefits of health and wellness and all this other stuff. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how many podcasts do you need to listen to tell yourself
Yeah.
and convince yourself that health is a good thing? Like
Yeah.
it's not something that should be debated. Like we
Yeah.
already know it's a good thing. We just got to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so, one thing I'm going to kind of turn the conversation towards that I think is really cool, and again, you're kind of practicing as you preach this. So, you and another of our cousins recently did an endurance race, where you're really kind of pushing yourself to the limit. And I place that conversation here now because,
Mhm.
like, as you're training for that, as you're building up to it, and going through the pain of that training to like the completion of doing it, just talk on that a little bit because I think that could be an actual like real life testimony of
Mhm.
like, hey, Nick and Brady are talking about like this actually being something that they practice. Like, just take it from me here and just kind of let them know what you did and
Mhm.
like how you were able to build into it and accomplish a really hard thing.
Sure. First, I'll give a shout out to Jake Fedler. Dude is a
Yep.
badass. Yeah, one of my cousins. He did it with me, and power to him. I mean, he grinded that thing out, and it was awesome to see him finish. But as far as kind of set, so we actually, me and Jake did a tough mudder. I think it was 2021, I believe, and we're just like texting each other, like, hey, like, we should do something like this. And we looked it up, and I'm like, hey, here's the cost. Like, let's book it. And we both signed up. Like, fuck it, we're doing it. We praying for it. We're not backing out. And I kind of like that because then we kind of hold each other accountable, which is nice. Nice to have in a situation like when. So we did a triathlon, I guess, to get to the answer. In Ames this past June, it was my first one, his first one. And it's kind of something I'd always wanted to kind of do, but I was kind of like scared to be like, hey, like I just like do it. I was just kind of like nervous for some reason, but I like to bike. Running is not my favorite, but I'm okay at it. But swimming, like I was like, I suck at swimming. Like this is gonna be rough. Um, in the swim that we did, so the whole triathlon was 750-meter swim, so just under a half mile, 15 and a half mile bike ride, and then a 3.1 mile run in a swim bike run format. Um, and I was so scared of like the swimming part because it was open water. I'm like, I can swim in a pool because like you can grab on the rope, you can get 25 meters to the edge and take a break. Like open water, like you're kind of screwed. I mean, obviously there's people there for safety like during the race. Um, but I remember my first workout, I was like, I'm gonna focus on my training. I was like, I'm gonna focus on swimming because I'm like, maybe I was an idiot. I'm like, I can bike, I can run, that's no problem. But swimming's gonna get me. So I for like a month and a half, 6 weeks, I would say I swam like once a week. And I kind of followed this somewhat plan, but I sucked at swimming. And the first one, I'm like, hey, I'll go swim 1,000 meters like total and just see what happens. I swam 400 total that first swim, like 25 down, and like I was gassed. I'm like, holy shit, dude! Like this sucks. Um, and even like the first month of swimming was like not that great. And then my other buddy that ended up signing for it, Ben, he's the kid that like you're like you son of a bitch because he can his endurance is just insane. Like he sends me a video, a picture of his watch, and he decided to do the traveling with us. He's like, at first swim in 2 years, he swam like 45 minutes straight, like 2,500 meters.
That is not
And
normal.
I'm like, no way, dude. Now, and so then me, I'm like, and I'm glad he sent it to me now because I'm like, I need to get my shit together.
Yeah, no
So
kidding.
then I think the most to that point that I had swam like in one session was 1,000 meters. That's like 500 nonstop, couple minute rest break, 500. I'm like, hey, 1,000 meters, I'm good. I'm like, that son of a bitch just did 2,500 meters like without training in like at once. I'm like, if he can do it, I can do a mile. So I was like, my goal is a mile nonstop in the pool. And I did it the
Amen.
next day and I was like, damn, I like never thought that I would be able to do that. So that was
Yeah,
kind of like
so
so
yeah,
like, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say,
Go ahead.
let me cut in on that. So this is exactly why I wanted to bring this up because you were completely novice to swimming.
Mhm. Yeah, still
And
am.
you at least got yeah, absolutely. But at least you got in the pool and you did it, and then, like, you coulda given up too, right?
Uh,
You coulda been like, "Hey, that's good." But y again, the consistency of just showing up and doing it to the point where you actually did a very, very noteworthy distance. I mean,
yeah.
again, we just said 50% of people, 50, have I think it was what, type 2 diabetes or
Yep.
something like that?
Yep.
And so, like, just a common person can't hop in a pool and do that.
Mhm.
So even if again you're somewhere out there like, hey, I want to get into cycling or I want to do this, and this, like you're probably not going to be great at it first, but the
Mhm.
more that you can just invest in it, the more confidence you get X, Y, Z. But yeah, see, this is a living example of you doing the same protocol that you would help someone with to
Mhm.
heal their hip or their shoulder or their knee. But anyway, we'll get back to the training
Yeah.
here. Sorry, I
No,
like to
you're
point
good.
that out because it's good.
Um, yeah, so like the swimming, like once I like my first swim of like a mile straight, I was like, obviously I was tired and like I was down bad, but I was like, damn, like I can actually do that. And I was like, the actual swim is half of that in the race, you know. I'm like, I just swim twice what I actually have to. So I think the most so then I kept kind of like staying at a mile, like just down and back, and obviously you're getting a breath at the turn and stuff, but and then I think I did one that was like 2200 meters. Like that was my longest like consistent swim. And then I was like, okay, like I got this. So then I kind of tapered back a little bit, like closer to the event. You know, then I was doing like a mile. The next week I'd do like, 1200 meters and kind of tapering back a little bit. And then I started going twice a week in the pool for like a month, I think, before the race. As far as biking goes, I like to bike. So like I didn't really train that. That just was kind of second nature to me. Um, and I was probably overconfident a little bit in my running. I'm like,
Sure.
I can run 3 miles, not fast, not great by any means, but like I know I can do it. Um, so that was probably the least that I like. The running was the least I trained for, and it bit me in the ass because the swimming I actually did like a lot better than I thought I would because I did a couple open water swims, and it is so much different than a pool. Because I was like, I could swim a mile straight in a pool, I do like 200 meters in open water. I was like, dude, this is not good. Like I'm screwed. So it's kind of the mentality of like, I
Yeah.
know I can swim. I know I have the endurance. It's like why can I not swim this in open water versus a pool? Because it's water. You know what I mean?
So I know swimming wise, like being able to get out of a pool, get into open water, like that's obviously a different experience, and yet you were able to handle that very very well, along with the running piece and cycling. But one thing I want to talk about, not so much of maybe the what, but when you're going into that race and you're mid race, what are some of the things that the mind is telling you? And I say that to say, like, how are you able to, as an athlete, like overcome some fatigue and like compete? Because that's another thing too that I don't think a lot of people have as a skill set. And you were introduced to this with sports and wrestling and whatnot. But when you're mid race, maybe a third of the way in or whatever, when does it start to affect you as you're just naturally kind of your endurance is, fatiguing? And how do you just try to like mentally stay in the game when you're in a race like that?
Sure. I think the cool thing about triathlons is like three completely different sports, if you will. You know, swimming, biking, running. For me, I knew like the transitions, just like getting. It was my first one. Like everyone I talked to, this someone was like, just get in the water, get out, get on the bike, get off, and then run, finish running. So for me, like right before I started swimming, like I'm like looking out, eyeing the course, and like they put you off, 3 people every 5 seconds. So people had already been swimming, 15, 20 minutes before the time I go. So kind of just watching them, I'm like, okay, like that's not too bad. And it was kind of like a triangle shape. You swim straight from the dock and then you take a right turn. And then the longest leg was like after the second buoy. So like I got to the first
Mm.
one, pretty good. Got to the second one with like one break, and then I get to the third, and I'm like, I kind of took a break, and I'm just like doggy paddling slowly forward. I'm like, damn, like just one stretch, just and kind of just knowing like the faster I get there, the faster I'm done with this is kind of the mentality I took. Um, Not that I swam any faster, but it's like, hey, like just put your head down and just go, kind of thing. And then once I was out of the water, I was like, holy shit, like that. I think that was the hardest part. Like let's go, baby. So then I'm sprinting to the bike. I get on the bike. I'm feeling pretty good. And then being just under 16-mile bike, I'm like, I do that on the weekend. It's not that bad. But then you get that's just out for a stroll. But then you get 7-year-old dudes passing you on a bike, and you're like, what the hell? Or like, there was a good amount of like older people, like even bigger people that would pass me, and like they have way nicer bikes and shit. But regardless, I'm like, damn, like these people are out here passing me. So I'm like mentally as a competitor, I'm like, I gotta kick it up a little bit. Um, so I think I kind of over exerted myself on the bike because I knew that was gonna be my strong suit. And I did pretty well on the bike as well. But then I get to the run and that kicked my ass like real quick. I got like a half mile in and I was like, okay, like I'll just hold steady. I got a double calf cramp, so I had to stop for like 30 seconds and stretch. And then I just like I was sucking ass, like sucking wind the last mile and a half. And actually, like a couple 7-year-old dudes passed me as well, or I actually passed them on the run. But in my mind, like as I, because you can see like their age is written on their calf and stuff, and I'm like coming up on them, and in my mind, I'm like, these dudes are out here at 70 years old doing this. Like that is awesome. And every time I'm by, and I was like, dude, I like it's awesome you're doing this. And one guy was like, just keep training, man, never stop training. And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like that dude gets it. Like that dude's been living. Like that's how I want to be when I'm 70. You know,
Hell yeah.
I don't want to be in a nursing home. I want to be doing shit like this. Um, so that was really cool. So that kind of helped me like mentally. And then I had like probably a mile left of the run, and some girl runs past me. She's like, "Hey, keep it up, you got this." And she just flies by me, and I was like, "Damn!" Like she's cruising, and I kind of like took it upon myself. I'm like, I need to finish this strong and like not cop out and just finish. Like I want to finish strong. So I tried to hold her pace and did so pretty well until the end. And that probably saved me like a minute and a half because like I was kind of just settling in and like just cruising. Like I knew I could finish that distance, but I kind of copped out and was like, I'm just gonna finish. I'm fine. But her passing me was kind of like, hey, like I got more in the tank, kind of thing. And so I'm glad she did. I'm kind of glad she like she wasn't being mean at all. You know, she was trying to encourage me, but I was like, I'm glad she said that because like that mentally was like, all right, Brady, kick it up. Like you can finish by
Yeah.
doing this. So and then like when I finished, I was like, I gave it my all in every single in all three stages. Like I didn't. I mean, I wish the run would have went better. You know, I could go back and train different this way, but I was like, first triathlon, like pretty happy with my result. Like I was pretty pumped. So it was awesome. Overall experience is really cool.
Well, and just to complete one, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
were talking really early in this podcast about just being able to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
so being able to finish a race like that, I think is like hats off to you. Like I have never even done anything like that
Mhm.
too. So like you got to tip your cap to those that are out there. Um, and just to note too, this is exactly again what we were talking about very early on. Those consistent habits stick with you. You have people twice your age that are out
Mhm.
competing you because they
Yeah.
just remain consistent. So
Yeah.
this is why I feel so strongly about like you just have to start somewhere and you got to keep going and doing it because once you get a taste for it, you never even know where you can end up. Um, the other thing too, like obviously competition is something that drives us human beings, but I think that in a race like that, you have to find what you're made of a couple times. You
Hmm.
have to decide like, is this it, or do I have a little bit more left in the tank? And for those that have never done that, like even if you go do a 5K, when you test your capacity to that degree, there's something so magical about experiencing that, overcoming it, and then just knowing, like you said, like you did like what you raced to the best to your ability.
Hmm.
And that immediately, I'm sure when you were done and you were relaxing, cheers, all that stuff, like you're like, all right, I'm already thinking about doing another one and how I
Dude,
can improve, you know?
funny you say that because I started looking up triathlon bikes like that night, and there was a race in Waterloo. I mentioned to Jake, I'm like, hey, like I kind of want to do this, and it was a little bit shorter of a swim, same bike, same run. I'm like, dude, less swimming, like let's do it. Ended up being the same day of the Iowa State games. Like we kind of like early on, I was like super pumped, like I'm doing this, and then I just kind of like lost that drive. I was like, okay, like I'll do another one next year. But I was like, I'm already in the shapes, like let's just keep it rolling. Um, but I just kind of like fell out, and I was like, okay, like I'll just wait to do another one. But I was like, for a solid week, I was like looking up triathlon bikes, and I'm like, do I really need to buy this $5,000 bike for one race
Yeah,
a
no
year?
kidding.
So
Well,
yeah,
and you're gonna like talk yourself into it too, and be like, "Hey,
yeah,
sweetie, like I really think this would be a good investment for my long term health." And
yeah,
it's like, "Hey, maybe not the $5,000 one right
yes,
off the
yeah,
bat, but
yeah,
yeah, I had experienced that when we did a Spartan 5K out in Vermont. Came in extremely undertrained to that, and I didn't even know what we were doing. But the cool thing there was, well, not the cool thing, but right before the race started, normally it's a 5K, and in Vermont is like their headquarters where it was all kind of founded. So they tell you before the race, right before the race, they go, "Oh, and by the way, this is going to be a couple miles longer, just because like that's just the mental fuck." And so we made it through. We died. It was really challenging and whatnot. But like the moment that was over, not only was I like, God, we just crushed that. That was amazing. But I was like, this is why people get addicted to fitness right here. Cause
yeah.
you immediately know what you're made of. You can respect yourself and you're like, all right, we can have a larger appetite for what we want to accomplish.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
that's just like that to me is the full pendulum swing of, connecting this whole dots in this podcast of like you have someone that would come in that is immobile in an area, and that same person in 5 years can be completing a triathlon.
Hmm.
And that's all just consistency and showing up and trying to get a little bit better every day. So,
Yeah.
any other thoughts on that? I do have one other topic of conversation I'd like to
Yeah,
hit
I
on.
would just say just the big kind of concept of that is just mind over matter, and that pertains to all aspects of life. It's just challenging yourself mentally to do things, and the body can do way more than it thinks it can, as long as the mind. You got to get the mind on board, and you can push yourself a lot further than you think. And like I said, that's all aspects. That's fitness. That's your job. That's anything you set your mind to. You can do it. You just have to tell yourself you can do it.
Oh man, I'm not going to add anything onto that because that's a fucking phenomenal piece, and it's so true too. And that's why, I mean, this will be the last thing I say on this, but go out and just sign up for something.
Yeah.
Just find a way to get there and get it done, because when you commit to something like that, even if you're super nervous, I was super nervous, and I, again, like, didn't perform to the level I wanted to, and I know you'd mentioned a little bit of that too, but like, once you get out of that comfort zone a little bit and stretch yourself, it immediately changes that paradigm shift.
Yep.
You know, so the last thing I wanted to hit on with you, Brady, is, within fitness, obviously there's a lot of things that can aid in your recovery. It can aid in your performance. I've taken pre-workouts before, I've taken post-workouts before, but one thing that we wanted to key in on here is specifically creatine. And so I'm not going to talk on that just because I'm not the guy that has some of the information, but I do think that this was something important that you wanted to share in terms of longevity, just general supplementation, getting a lot of this good nutrients into our body. So feel free to grab the mic and run with it a little bit.
Sure. So creatine to me is one of the, just study wide, it's one of the most safe supplements you can take. Obviously, I take it for like athletic performance and no muscle recovery type stuff. Um, but I kind of recently got in, and kind of with the functional health stuff I like to look into. I kind of got more into like just brain health after that motorcycle accident I got in after college. Um, Partly because I don't think like I have a medical background. I didn't at that time, but I do now. But looking back at the lack of information they told me on what really happened and like how to recover was kind of astonishing. Like I was on like body cam footage from the cop of like being unconscious for who knows how long,
Oh
and
man.
and they
And
try to and they try to say I didn't have a concussion, and I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Didn't tell me anything. Just fucking sent me home out. And like when I got home out of the hospital, I was like, and I was out of it for like a week. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why am I home right now? Like, what the fuck just happened? Um, but long story short, like that's kind of like when my sleep issues. Like, I used to be a super deep sleeper. Since that day, like I a super light sleeper, and like I think it's directly correlated. Like something happened. Um, but for me, like I really like treating like concussions now because I think it's such an important thing that I mean, like your brain is what keeps you going. So brain health is one of the big like passions that I have. Partly from personal experience is kind of what's driven that a little bit. But creatine, I kind of started looking into the brain health stuff of it. So kind of just for those people that don't know, a lot of people like will use creatine as like for athletic performance, like I was saying, like muscle mass, muscle size, things like that. Um, as far as what creatine does, it basically resynthesizes ADP into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is what your body uses for energy. So you
mm,
have to use ATP. And then going back to just like concussions and brain injuries, or like a mild TBI is what we would call it, traumatic brain injury. Um, we call it like the metabolic cascade, where the sodium potassium pump in your brain doesn't function as well, and that depends on the brain health at the time, like the severity of it, but it's not functioning. So your ATP is not being cycled properly through that system. So a lot of times, like post concussion or TBI, you get fatigued, you get depressed, you get anxiety, you get all these different things going on, partly because that ATP is not being cycled or it's not functioning properly. So one of the cool studies I found, this morning I found this is I just typed in creatine and brain health, and it's from the NHI, and it's just creatine supplementation and brain health is what it's called, and they were looking at the effects it would have on mild TBI, aging, Alzheimer's, and depression.
mm.
Which I think obviously like a lot of people as we age are getting Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, a lot of like brain driven diseases. And not to go back to the pharma stuff, but a lot of times just like, hey, take this pill and hopefully you have a better memory kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And creatine it's a naturally occurring supplement. A lot of in like red meats and like steaks and stuff have, like two, it's a low amount, but there is some in there. Um, but the brain can synthesize creatine, which I didn't really know that, to be honest with you. So this was kind of a cool study to read. Um, but they also looked at autism too, which I thought was kind of cool, and learning delays. So obviously,
Damn.
yeah. So like with the way kids are now, and you can attribute it to diet, whatever you want to attribute it to, but a lot more kids are getting prescribed like Ritalin and all this stuff because like, oh, I can't focus in school, blah blah. It's like, hey, all right, let's give you this medication. That's for another time. We've already talked about it. But yes, like ATP, they looked at, or the ATP and creatine, they looked at kind of what that can do, which I thought was pretty cool. Kind of the big thing, I got to find my highlight here. So other factors related to aging that influence brain creatine. So like we already have creatine in our brain apparently, which is honestly news to me. Um, Concentrations include reduced brain and/or physical activity, depression, schizophrenia, and panic disorder.
Mm,
So that was kind of cool to me because I feel like just tying that into mental health, that's like you can't really see a lot of those things,
right.
within someone's head. So everyone's gonna be different with that. But I thought it was cool in that regard. And then just to kind of summarize this study here, if I can find all my highlights.
Well, and if I may, I'll kind of
Yeah,
give you a
of
little
course,
bit of
yeah,
time to find that. But so what we're really trying to kind of hammer on here, and to be honest, to the listeners, I totally forgot that Brady got into an accident, so that's on me for not bringing that up. Um, but instead of just framing creatine in this, like, got to be a gym bro to take creatine,
yeah.
no, we're shifting that to like this is just a daily supplement that will
Mhm.
help not only enhance some of the things that you had mentioned, but like just as like a naturally optimal functioning human being, is I think what you're getting at, correct?
Yeah. So they found that overall, just kind of to wrap up this study, that creatine may lessen other features of a mild TBI, such as membrane disruption leading to calcium influxes, like the metabolic cascade I was talking about earlier, nerve damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, oxidative stress, and inflammation. So basically, long story short, the more creatine that you have reduces the severity of or enhanced recovery from a TBI or concussion by offsetting the negative effects due to that
Mm,
metabolic cascade. Um, and I haven't really found a way yet to implement it into my practice because, like, I will see concussions, but it's kind of like, hey, man, like you had concussion, like you should take creatine because the study didn't really say like the proper dosage. It didn't look into that.
sure, which is it's
Yeah,
tough to kind of drill that down, but
yeah, and hopefully it will someday. But like it's an over the counter supplement that anybody can go get. So I recommend it. Like I use it personally, like I said, for fitness. But now at this point, I also take my brain health into effect. And just the general population of people that as you age, you get Alzheimer's, and people kind of think that's the end all be all. But if you can look into getting this stuff in earlier, and I'm glad we have this out now because it's something I'll probably take the rest of my life, knowing that there's studies out there that are looking into this. But there's other things out there that can help, and this is I think is such a simple thing to add. It's flavorless. You can put it in a smoothie, mix it water, coffee, whatever it is. But this was a pretty cool study for me to read just because I really didn't have that. Like I knew it was. I seen studies that it was good for your health. I never really looked into them, so it was really cool to like actually dive into this and kind of see what they did and the effects that they found with it. So I just
yeah,
kind of
and
put my 2 cents in with that. But
absolutely. And this is like, the listeners on this just want to reiterate, like, so this isn't something necessarily that, we wanted to come in here and say like, hey, this is the scientific, approach that me and Brady think, cause like, they're probably like, oh, you guys are just two guys on a podcast. Right. But I think the real message here is that when you look at just daily supplementation, this can do so much more for you than probably what you even think that it can.
mhm.
And another thing I'll throw out here too, for my own kind of experience, magnesium.
Yeah,
Magnesium
oh
was
yeah,
something too that I was highly deficient in, and most people I think are just because of various reasons. But adding in those things can help again live just a little bit more healthy life, like here in
Yep.
the now. And we're saying this because we're not even pushing a product, right? We're just
Yeah.
taking something that you had kind of a life-changing event, and that prompted you to research what's going on. And through that, you found this really great study and just further knowledge on why taking creatine, worthwhile to dive into.
Yeah, and I also think so on this last page too, I just found I highlighted. They found that it has been shown to improve cognition, communication, self-care, personality, and behavior, and also reduce headaches, dizziness, and fatigue in children with a mild TBI. So, kind of looking back at what we talked about earlier, a kid with symptoms of concussion or TBI goes to the doctor and says, "Hey, I'm have trouble focusing, my mood changes, I'm tired, dizzy, blah blah blah." They get what they get prescribed Adderall, and who knows now that becomes a chronic issue for them the rest of their life because that alters
Right.
your brain. Whereas creatine is a naturally functioning thing in your body and in food. So just going back to the more natural, holistic way of looking at things, like this is what I wish would be not necessarily pushed on us, but like I wish they would educate us on this instead of having a commercial that says, "Here's this with all these side effects." Like, hey, like let's look into these natural things that don't have side effects, and let's kind of run with that and see how that goes. And that's just maybe my personal opinion on that, and not to go on a rant, but I kind of think it would be cool. And I'm kind of transitioning into a little bit of like not to get political, but what RFK is doing, I think is going to change the world in a way because the way that our country has gone with our health is kind of crazy. So I think just the way that he's taken a more natural way, and he's been diving into this for decades, but chronic issues in our food system is dog shit, to be completely honest with you. So I really hope when he gets in there that he makes the change he wants to, and I hope the country takes a turn and actually listens to some of the stuff he's putting out there because it can change someone's life for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, a couple quick things here with that. So, first off, it would be great if we lived in a world where, Brady, they came in and instead of, let's say, prescribing Ritalin or whatnot, they go, hey, you know what? Option one, why don't you just take some creatine, a
Mhm.
very normal dose of creatine for, let's say, 2 months and see how you feel. That is what we wish that we would have implemented,
Yeah.
not, hey,
Yep.
hop on Ritalin because you have ADHD because you look at your
Yeah.
phone all the time.
Yep.
But with him, talking on, even if you're not a proponent of him in particular,
Mhm.
just be open minded to someone that, physically, there are many videos of him still being able to do push-ups and pull-ups and
Yeah,
being
he's
in
a
shape.
beast.
So
Yeah, he's
yeah,
a beast.
he's an absolute beast. And we felt it was relevant to bring him up here because the functional approach, but when a guy can do that at the age that he's at, that just says, hey, this is living proof of, hey, we're going to
Yeah.
bring in a different approach to how we're going about things because the stats that we shared earlier was the approach that we have been taking. And I don't think those results are favorable for a goddamn person.
No, God, no. But yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, and we could, yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna get political, but it's just I hope that like I just hope that actually that does make a change because I'm sick of seeing commercials that say take this when you have this going on and blah 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 side effects may include, and then they list all 50 of them. That just like I hate that those are on TV, but they are. So
yeah, it's like you wish it could be like a commercial on, hey, are you feeling depressed? Why don't you take some daily supplementation, go for a 20-minute
yeah,
walk, get some exercise in and some
yep,
sunlight, and then see how that treats you.
yep,
So yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not for that person politically, fair enough. But we're advocates of health. We're advocates of functional health, and we want to be just healthy and live for a long time. And that's
yep,
why we wanted to cover this as like a blanket to bring him in there because I think that he does believe that and he wants to get
mhm,
back to it. Because, like you had mentioned, healthy people are not profitable, which
mhm.
is terrible to think of it like that. But that's where we're at, and we're going to continue to fight the good fight. So, just as we're rounding out here, Brady, any other thoughts or comments or anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, just kind of one final thought to leave with people. 'Cause like I said, holistic approach and functional health approach. I think diet is just super important with every aspect of life. But I was watching a video, and I don't know what it was. It was some governmental meeting. But one of the guys out there was talking to him, and he brings it up. He mentioned they're talking about something with the food industry, and he kind of made the comment. He's like, "So most of your grocery stores, if you think about it, have a health section, right?" And the lady's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What does that make the rest of the grocery store then?" And the
Mm,
whole place was like, "Damn." And like when he and that could even hit me. I was like, you're right, because you have a tiny little corner of a grocery store that's the healthy section. So what else is all the bullshit that's not in that section, right? And now I was just kind of like, that was damn. I was that's all that was my response was damn. But a lot
Yeah,
of people probably just don't realize that. But it was kind of wild.
I've never even heard that before, but the
Yeah,
fact that that's coming up now, I mean, that's pretty much a slap in the face right there.
yeah,
If we just strip away all the crap, and also, like, indulge when you want to, but at the
yeah,
same token, like, you're just the diet that you have on a fairly regular basis, whole foods, meat
hmm
is not bad for you, all this stuff that we've been fed is unfortunate, but, I mean, I don't think that there's anything more productive to say than that thing that you just mentioned right there. I mean, that's cutting right through everything.
yeah, yeah. And I guess just to kind of wrap up, another quote I was going to say earlier, but I think because when you're talking about the training stuff, is that like to make lifelong changes for your benefit, like you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I can't remember who said it. I heard it on podcast and I was like, God damn, that's good. Like that is so true. Like people get so stuck in their comfort zone, and that could pertain to any aspect of life. But I think a lot of people don't strive towards their goals or meet their life goal because they get so comfortable with where they're at and they're scared to make that jump. And like I said, that could be a new job. It could be a health goal. It could be anything you want to do in your life. Like you have to be somewhat comfortable with being uncomfortable because it's part of life, and that's how you make the changes that you need to make.
Boom, mic drop right there. To further that point, though, that's where I guarantee you, when you're uncomfortable in the moment, again, it's not fun, but you feel so alive and so locked in and just healthy and like resilient when you make it through those things. That's why you do the cold plunges. That's why you do the saunas and the runs and all this other stuff. It's because you're building up that toughness and resiliency that you're supposed to feel, and we're not saying you got to go David Goggins on this whole thing and run like a 500, mile run or whatever. But this is just a better approach to living the good life. And that could honestly be just like the title of what we're trying to talk about today,
Yeah,
outside of
I
like
like it.
obviously you educating us on the PT world. So good deal, man. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the Life with Nick podcast. I loved catching up with you, not only as a cousin, but just as a guest, to be able to kind of dive into some of this stuff. And appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, I'm super happy we made this work. We've been talking about it for a while, so I'm really glad we had this conversation. It was awesome.
Hell yeah, man. Well, to the listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope we provided a little bit of value. And until next time,
Deuces.
deuces.